looking at people like Tony Robbins that have been talking about different, emotional intelligence frameworks. Looking at even some of the, leadership books of John C. Maxwell, and even Carl Jung and some of the other philosophers and psychologists that have talked about different philosophies. And I said all of those make sense, and even with religion, all of those make sense, and they have a need, and they have a message, and they have a system.
So, Roz, it's great to see you. I know we are semi-new to each other, but we came through a mutual friend of ours who happens to be my co-founder of Habitual Growth, but also my sister. But I think she's a new addition to your network as well. So that said, who are you? What do you do? And let's just dive right in.
Yeah, so, talking about the small world, Mindy and I have been friends for 20 years, and that's how I end up meeting your sister. And Mindy said, I got to meet her. So, because she's kind of doing the same things that I'm working on, and that's how it led to you and I connecting, Nathan. So happy to be on. Looking forward to having this conversation between us. You look at the past journey versus where I am, it's kind of hard to get it summarized in few words. But, my current journey is, I'm working and writing a book on emotional intelligence, and not just a typical book on an emotional intelligence where it talks about an EQ, or what is EQ and how do you kind of change some of the things and habits and things like that. It's mostly a framework that helps you transform. So it's a guide, it's a framework that you can use to increase your emotional intelligence. I think the increase is not really the word I wanted to use, but it's like in a quantifying way. If I have an IQ measurement, I should have an EQ measurement. So I should also be able to increase that as well.
Yeah, and I love that. And I think that's one of the areas why I was so excited to get you on, as I've kind of told you off camera here. You have a formula. I'm a chemical engineer by trades. I know you dealt with mathematics. I'm not sure what your actual degree was, but I like that because, with mathematics and a formula, an equation, it's pretty specific, right? And I think, there's a lot of general speak on the internet of, hey, you should do this, you should do that, but it's not based in formula. And I actually like the fact that you have put together this success formula. So that said, what is the success formula?
That's a good question. So I also have a degree in electronics engineering. So my mind is a mathematic, and I'm a
Yes.
left brain, and emotional intelligence is the right brain function. So I always wanted to combine to say, how do I get the two together? How do you get that harmony? And, after reading hundreds of books on business and philosophy, on psychology, looking at people like Tony Robbins that have been talking about different, emotional intelligence frameworks, looking at even some of the, leadership books of John C. Maxwell, and even Carl Jung and some of the other philosophers and psychologists that have talked about different philosophies. And I said all of those make sense, and even with religion, all of those make sense, and they have a need, and they have a message, and they have a system. But what I was missing is, how do you kind of put all of that together in a systematic way that we can use it over and over again. So it's more like a guide and a compass to solve emotional intelligence. I wouldn't say a problem, to increase emotional intelligence. It's not solving a problem, it's increase emotional intelligence. So before I kind of start about what the formula is, I want to talk about my journey into it. And then before I said, okay, why would we even have a success formula? What does success mean? And Nathan, even between you and I, success is different. We consider success differently. And you talk to every individual, they'll be different. So then I really went through and say, okay, let me first define success before I figure out the formula. So looking at the success fundamentals, they say there's fundamentally 4 pillars of success. And yes, there could be many, there could be 6. You and I talk about, you have six pillars. So I wanted to keep it simple in my mind, right? Because it comes from my mind. I say it's going to be four. And they're not in sequence. They are finance. And when I say finance, I don't talk about just P&L or monies, but everything we do to earn money. It could be entrepreneurship. It could be running a business, having a job, anything that helps us earn money to survive or to thrive, either way. Then the second pillar is health, because you can have all the money in the world and the health is suffering, we are suffering. Because if you're laying in bed, it doesn't matter, what the bank balance is. We want to heal. So the second pillar is health, and the third pillar is inner peace. And we can have the health and the wealth, but if you're not feeling good internally, we also suffer. So it's that's going to be a third pillar of success. And the fourth pillar I define is relationships. And the relationships are just not husband and wife or significant other. It's family, it's kids, it's parents, it's siblings. Every different type of relationship that is out there, with friends, with coworkers, with your boss, they're all relationships. So then I say this is the fourth pillar. And it's not identifying those pillars means success. It's the goal is to harmonize those pillars. And depending on which cycle of life we are in, we may focus on one pillar more than the other. So when we're in our 20s, we might be focused on finance because, we need money. We are barely getting out of school and, we need to earn something. So we put a lot of effort in it. But the goal is not to ignore all the other pillars and just put all the effort. It's not focus. Focus is different. Yes, we should focus what we are doing, but we can also put effort into other pillars. So the goal is not to ignore and really try to, and as we go through the cycles of life, we harmonize different pillars, and that's kind of the flow. And once you're in a harmony of the different pillars, we get into the flow state.
Yeah, I love that. That's so great. When you Let's talk about each one of those pillars really quickly. So the financial piece, if I'm understanding it correctly, really is, it is monetary related, right? So some people talk about wealth, but then that kind of spills into the relationship aspect. But in terms of the success formula, this is really monetary to make sure that you can earn a living. You're not stressed about your bills, right? Like there is that little bit of comfort that comes along with that. Relation.
You know what? Yeah,
Good.
add one more thing here. And why did I pick finance? Because people have negative relationship with money, and we think money is the roots of all evil. Well, more money, more problems. I mean, all those sayings are kind of going around, so we create this negative relationship with it, and then we set a block. We get a money block. Then we can only earn up to that block, and then we worry, why can't I earn more? Why am I stuck here? Whether in our career, in just monetary currency or a fiat currency that we have in our bank, right? So it's very important that's why I specifically pick finance, not wealth, business, not anything, because of the negative correlation we have with money.
Yeah. I know you do a lot of teaching, and we'll come back to this a little bit later in the conversation, but do you also teach flipping people's mindsets because of that negative connotation where it is, use money as a tool? Yes, everybody needs it, but if you let money flow through you, for me, that's actually one of the big learnings that I've had over the last couple of years is I used to kind of honestly just hoard, it was like, how much can I get? How much can I keep? And now I've really, to your point, I've had to flip that negative connotation because to me, that was always a sign of scarcity. And now if hey, money's coming in, it's going out. If I allocate it to the right areas, that could be the other pillars that you talked about. That could be health. That could be the relationships. That could be the inner peace, whatever it is. But is that something that you also teach to a lot of the people that you go out and speak to?
To some extent, and then different people are at different places. Like in your example, for example, and I'm not saying that is the fact of the matter is, it might be that you don't feel safe giving money away. It's a safety is a concern. So usually we hoard it or keep it because of our own past trauma. And we create that limiting belief that if I don't have this much money, I will suffer. And sometimes instead of putting money to work, because you're so afraid, we keep collecting it, but our money is not growing at the same time. Yep. So, however, the negative belief came in, yes, I talk about it, is we need to truly identify the source. That's the type of work that I teach.
Awesome. I love that. And again, we're going to touch on that here in a little bit again. Moving over to the relationship pillar. Are these do they include acquaintances, or is this, pretty much people that are in your everyday life? So it is your coworkers, your friends, your close family that you're interacting with. How far out do you define relationships in this equation?
That's a very good question. I think it's subjective to how do you see others?
Mhm.
How do you spread your love to other people? So if we have this demarcation to say, okay, I'm only going to share this much with me, or I will only smile at this person, only connect with them, then we being selective. Because anybody we interact with, we exchange energy, as you know that well. So it's the relationship in traditional sense is defined in very narrow terms. Is like, okay, siblings, and parents, family. That was narrow. Then we broaden it a little more, where coworkers and maybe because we spend so much time at work, and bosses and stuff like that also has a relationship. But even, checked into the hotel, do I have a relationship with that person? I have an interaction with that person. How would I define that as a relationship? At the moment, we had a connection.
Yeah.
Is every connection a relationship or not? I think it's subjective to person how they like interacting with people.
Yeah, no, I agree with that completely. I think there's a lot to be said about just what we can do for relationships, meaning when you're checking into a hotel, just that little interaction, a quick smile, how are you doing? It's amazing what that really opens up in that transfer of energy. And it does take people, in my experience, time to realize that. But once you open that door and you start to crack it, you realize how much impact we can actually have on the world and other people, and just opening up that transfer of energy back to us. And that's something that's really powerful. Similar to what we talked about on the monetary side of things, where if you use money as a tool and it kind of flows through you, you're repurposing it, you get rid of kind of that scarcity mindset. I really feel like the energy transferred in relationships is kind of the same deal.
100%, because we are all, look at quantum physics or neuroscience. That's all they talk about. We are continuously vibrating, right? So, and then we are all we are is energy. And then from that standpoint, you look at it, or interactions energy. Money is also called currency, and currency is energy, right? So they're all related. Going back to relationship, as you were talking, makes sense. If I narrowly define that's what a relationship is, and should I then really even smile at a stranger because he's not in my relationship circle?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So the narrower are our definition, the difficult, the more restricted we become, and we block our own energy because we have so much to give, but we continuously making ourselves small instead of letting go and making ourselves bigger.
Yeah. And every time I have this conversation, it always reminds me of, one of Gandhi's most favorite or famous quotes, right? Which is like, be the change you want to see in the world. And I always, for any sort of relationship, that's the one that always sticks with me, because in that moment in time, even if you don't know that person, but you're willing to take that first step, and it's like, hey, I wish the world was a little bit friendlier. I wish more people smiled at me and gave me positive energy. Well, it's like, you gotta sometimes give that to get it back. And so it's always, to me, it's just that personal reminder when you go out there. It's like, hey, I can do things a little bit different to be what I want to receive back. And every time I do that, it's almost always reciprocal. I mean, sometimes it's not, right? The very few occasions, but for the most part, people want that. They want that positivity. They want that transfer of good energy. They want to help other people out. There is the good nature that lies in all of us, because I think even subconsciously, most people understand that we are connected in some sort of capacity.
I completely agree. And I think you hit right on. Yeah, there's going to be instances that, people are not going to respond to us. And but that I found like 99% of the time is not because of me.
Mm-hmm.
It's because the state of mind they are in,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And that's why, because sometimes you're in the elevator and you say hi and people don't respond back to you, they might be in a different state of mind, or they might be so stressed for the meeting they're going to get into, they can't even acknowledge that somebody else is in with them.
Yeah. 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 100%. I want to pivot quickly over to relationships, and then we're going to get into the bigger topic, which is resistance, because I've been really waiting to dive into that piece of it. But from the health side of things, I'm assuming for the purposes of the formula and the context of this conversation, we're talking about both physical and mental health. So kind of everything built into one for health. Are you focused mainly on the mental health side of things, or does it actually, kind of for both?
So I separate my health is physical health.
Okay.
Mental health I put in the inner peace pillar.
Okay.
Because you get to the flow state or in a state where you are moving with the current is when you have the mental peace. So that comes from the mental health side of things. So when I talk about health pillar, it's physical health, optimizing your physical health, whatever that is for somebody, because I truly believe that when you feel healthy, your emotions are also becomes healthier along with it, because your body will, if it's not healthy, let's say when we are physically sick, that's what our bodies focus on. It takes all the energy to heal it. And if we are not physically fit, and the definition of fitness is different, right? I've done extreme, to triathlon, to bodybuilding, type of extreme fitness. That doesn't mean it's definition of fitness. Fitness means you feel good. Whatever level you are, if you're not feeling good at the level you are, then yes, you're physically not fit.
Yeah, I love that. I was actually thinking about that this morning. I got up and it was the first night that I had actually had a good rest. I left my window open. It was 55 degrees last night instead of blazing hot out here. I woke up, I didn't wake up. My kids didn't wake me up throughout the entire night. I felt like I got a really good chunk of rest in, and I feel completely different this morning. So I would 100% agree. And that's just the component of rest. That's not even the physical exercise, the nutrition piece, anything like that. So I wholeheartedly agree with that differentiation. One of the things that we talked about in our first conversation, though, was this idea of resistance. And in the formula, if I remember it correctly, there is a negative resistance. So meaning you are helping people remove the resistance to achieve the optimum pillars for their personal journey or life or whatever season that they're in. Can you explain that piece of the formula, and then we'll dive into
Yeah.
the specifics there?
Yeah. So before I jump into that, I want to just really quickly talk about the formula and then get into resistance,
Perfect.
because that's where we spend most of the time. So, I have attended, maybe similar to you, many, many webinars, have read, most books on business, lots of the author, also self-help books. And what happened, one of my favorite classic books is, Think and Grow Rich from Napoleon Hill. And as you read through all these books and then you try to apply some of that, and then say, okay, you apply it. And then a week or 2 weeks later, you're back at the same place, or you incrementally grow. It's just like 1% maybe year over year growth by using some of these techniques, using some of these, reading some of these books. They're all great. I mean, they've been amazing. But I said, okay, how do I create a long lasting change and create it quickly instead of years and years and years? That's when I started coming about the formula. I said there's got to be a foundation. Needs to be a structure. There needs to be a method that 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 people can just follow, and and you can do it over and over again. So I started with, okay, I said, what is the first thing we need in the formula? So that reminded me of the Napoleon Hill's book. I said, and everything else that I've studied is the first thing is desire. And desire is not a need, not a want, not a goal. Desire is why you want something you want, why you want to be in a good health, why you need the money, this much money. Okay, maybe buy a house, maybe buy a house for my parents, whatever, there needs to be a why. So the first thing is desire. So desire is only a dream unless you take some actions. So I say the second part of the formula is desire plus action. I mean, we are doing this on daily basis. It's not like written that way, but you have a goal, you go take some action about it.
Yeah.
Or we just have a pipe dream, we sit, we tell everybody about it, but don't do anything, right? So that also happens. So say desire plus action. That makes sense. And we've been living our lives that way, so I just wrote it down. So then what happens is, why don't I get to where I want to go? And most of the time, and almost all the time, I should say, is the resistance that shows up. So I say D plus A minus R, desire plus action minus resistance. And we'll jump into the resistance here in a second, because that was the question. And then we have to be able to receive it, because sometimes we don't, even if we remove resistance, self-limiting beliefs, we don't receive it, and that also creates we don't achieve the success we want because we self sabotage. So the formula says desire plus action minus resistance plus receiving. Now, let's dive into resistance. So, resistance traditionally, I say that the trifecta of it. We have triggers, we have emotions, we have self limiting beliefs. So, keep it very simple. Call it as a trifecta. And they all attack sometimes at the same time, sometimes separately. You'll have a trigger, you feel an emotion, you get angry, why this guy cut me off, right? And then you have self-limiting belief, maybe may not be a good driver, right? So this is like a simple example. They all hit you at the same time, and then another guy cuts you off. It kind of reinforces, and your anger keeps increasing, and we never resolve it. So, and there's several others. It could be around money, it could be around your health, or I can never get in a good shape. Well, that's a self-limiting belief, right? If you have that, you're not gonna get in a good shape. So the trifecta of the resistance is coming at us. So then I write about that to say how do you kind of resolve it. So there's a whole process I've written down from identification to awareness to identification to then going back and analyzing where the root cause is and then trying to use different tools to resolve it. So not all tools work for the same thing. Sometimes affirmations work, sometimes it doesn't work. Sometimes you need visualization, sometimes it doesn't. Sometimes you need journalism, sometimes you need to listen to a meditation, sometimes you need to pray. So I call it all those tools that exist. So depending on where you are, a different affirmation will work better than this. A journalism will work better than this. You may have to journal first before you do. So there's also sequence of the event sometimes needs to happen, or we need to go and find that trauma first as when you were a child. So there are different sequences of events happen based on the diagnosis of the resistance. And some resistance are can be used the same diagnosis over and over again, and they can be resolved. Others are more subtle. They just don't want to go away, right? So we have to really dig deeper.
Yeah, I love that. I've actually never heard that broken down in that capacity before, but that's as you're talking about this and you're giving the different examples of the trifecta, what can work, what can't. As an example, I've always shared with my wife, I've tried to visualize. I really believe and support people that say, "Hey, I did this and it changed my life." It just never stuck for me. And finally, I forced myself, quite frankly, to put a vision board together. I actually have it sitting right over here.
Yeah.
And then what I ended up doing is I took the images and the visions, I overlaid affirmations on top of them. But then when I was going to visualize, I could actually close my eyes, see the affirmations, and see the pictures of it. But when I used to try, it was like put yourself in a situation that you want. There's a gentleman that I constantly follow as an example, and he would talk about how, he had this vision of him being, on this private jet and he could see the red carpet going up into it. He could touch the railing and feel the railing and smell the plane and all this stuff. And I was just never able to get to that granular level until I actually took a different step. Like instead of forcing myself to just create this thing out of the fiction of my mind, I actually took a photo, overlaid the affirmation, and then it kind of pieced together. Like the puzzle actually worked different for me in that capacity. And then everything started to make sense. Right. And so I listen to
100%.
what you're sharing and I get a lot of that of like, hey, you might have to try 2, 3, 4, 5 different things to get it all to come together. And then you'll find the puzzle that works for you.
100%. And then we have all now the information is available. It's not like 20, 30 years ago. And there's so much out there, and everybody's talking about whatever their technique is, whether it's affirmation, whether it's visualization or tapping. There's so many, or qigong, or reiki. These are big, yoga, and they feel that this is really good for their healing. And it is true that each individual modalities are good, but putting them together in a systematic way is what my work is. I'm not saying that this is not good, this is better than this. There's very individual specific, and also Nathan, I found that as we evolve different techniques, you can almost use all of them and at a different level because we haven't really broken through the way we need to first. We can't really use visualization because maybe we're not a visual person. For example, for the longest time I couldn't do silent meditation. right? It was so then I was told it's better for you to do Tai Chi or walking meditation. So that's great. I can just walk and do meditation, right? That's fine, right? So I started doing that. But over time, now I can sit and do a silent meditation. So sometimes it's the how we are evolving in different times, and that's why the sequence and the formula is set up that way so we can apply it in sequence. Because if I keep telling you, oh, you gotta do visualization, Nathan, you gotta do it, or it works for me. It's gotta work, man. so I think that's where we get stuck, and then we don't transform.
Yeah. And I really
That's
like
why
that because I do think people speak in absolutes. I think I'm going to pick on my wife a little bit here, who's wonderful and she's very much into everything that we're talking about, but she moves a little bit more of a slower pace than I do. So she can sit, and do her meditations. She really loves yoga. It's the slower pace things where for me, I'm the same way. If I try to sit and do silent meditations, I'm all over the place. My mind just wanders all over. But if I walk and I try to meditate, or I walk and I pray, or I walk and I think, it's very different for me because I'm doing something physical to help get my energy out. And I found that that really works for me, but that doesn't work for everybody, like you're saying. And so I think people need to be careful about speaking in absolutes. And I like the way that your approach is like, hey, we got to try a couple of different things to see what really works for you. But it also reminds me of today's culture of kind of FOMO, if you will, of like, there's so much information out there, so many people seeming to do things that work for them, but we don't really know what's true. So how do you speak? Because I know you do speak in front of university students and perhaps even a little bit younger, but how do you tell them maybe to go explore and don't have that, FOMO that somebody it's work just because it looks like it's working for somebody else doesn't even mean that it actually is. It just means they're putting a good 30 seconds together on Instagram or TikTok or whatever.
making me laugh. One of my sticky notes says FOMO and has a cross on it. It's okay. And it's not like FOMO doesn't. I mean, yes, you can. Emotions will come up, things will come up, and you just learn to manage it better, right? It's not that I can no longer have anger emotion. I can no longer have sadness. I can no longer have excitement. They all emotions, they exist no matter where you are in your journey of life. And I think at a younger level, you try to teach them the foundations, right? Because nobody really taught us. I mean, almost everybody listen to any guru out there. This is where is the manual for our brain? No, we were God created us, but didn't give us the manual. Okay,
Yeah.
I know. So where is it? So then, with the little work, the small things I'm doing is trying to kind of have it more structured. It's not that I have a manual by any means. We are so complex. So with the students, we talk more about understanding the foundation of the emotions and relationships and not getting stuck in the emotional cycles. Because at that level, they're still developing. And now I'm even having discussion with high schools. They also want to start teaching emotional intelligence because that's, as you know, it makes the biggest difference in success. IQ, yes, but the EQ is will take you to the peak, right? Where IQ maybe takes you to the base or to a certain level in your life, but EQ can take you to a much higher dimension, whether it's health, inner peace, finance, or relationships, right? And relationship is almost all EQ. IQ actually hurts hurts us sometimes in relationships. So before I answer the question on how AI is going to change, let's talk a couple of 100 years of our history, right? Like 150 years ago, give and take, most people were farmers. We farmed the lands, and then we switched into a industrial economy, right? Where we had now factories, people were working in the factories. So those farmers have to shift and learn, and for them, that's a big change. We don't think that's a big change, but for them that was a big change because all you're doing is farming, and now all you have to do is operate the machinery. That's a big change. Yeah. And then we had that one shift, and then we came the computers and everything, the internet, right? So uh, going from the libraries, now you can have that information instantly available, and that was a big change. So we became a, what they call the knowledge based economy. So we have already went through from farming to industrial to knowledge based. Now we're going into a different phase with whether they will call it an AI eventually, or something else. We're going into that phase.
Yeah.
And when we're going into that phase, we are in that shift. You and I may have touched on the shift of industrial to computers, but we forget now, because that was a big shift. Because at that time, it felt, okay, what's going to happen to all these jobs? Computers are going to take over. They're not going to need people, right? There was a time when people thought like that. Now, same thing's going to happen. Yes, there are going to be changes, and we as human are resilient, and we will adapt to the new way of being, right?
Yep. Yep.
When we be doing even higher level functions, we have to go higher level. IQs or EQs have to now go to the next level. The stuff they're teaching kids these days, they were not teaching that in the 70s, 80s, and 90s.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So when they grow up and when they are in their teenagers or in their 20s, from 20 years from now, they will be super intelligent beings, a lot more intelligent than I am, in different ways,
Mm-hmm.
right? Their awareness is a lot higher than mine was when I was at that age.
Mm-hmm.
So is it going to have, we will have less IQ, EQ? I don't think so. I think we'll have to get even higher to come at it. And some people will and some people won't. It's just like everything else.
Yeah.
In every society shift that we had, there are like the bell-shaped curve. They are early adopters, they are the middle people, and they are laggards, right? So the people who are not gonna adopt.
Yeah.
And we see that in current society, the same is going to be 20 years from now. That's my take on it.
Yeah. I think that's a great answer. I don't know if I would differ that much. I think back to, and you brought up the early days of the computer. When I grew up, I'm in my 40s, and it was when they first started introducing computers into schools, right? I remember taking the first ever computer, like keyboard typing courses that they offered in schools. I have a 2-year-old now, and my 2-year-old can take my phone and she can use it. There's no keyboards, everything is done on the screen. She knows how to navigate, and that's just the world she grew up in, right? Completely different. And I think your answer is spot on. Of people are always creative. I mean, there's always driven people. There's always the achievement that's there. We're going to go attack a goal. We're going to, define success in whatever capacity that is, but we're going to go pursue something for the achievement of it, right? We're curious. We're going to try to solve problems, as we view the landscape, or survey the landscape and look for some of the problems. And so I think naturally we will adapt. But at the end of the day, there is going to always be a human component, that is incorporated into whatever technological force comes our way. And I think it's just really important for people to remember. And that's actually why habitual growth was born, is to help people craft themselves into whatever that idea is, in terms of the integration of technology or a better achievement for success and goals, because the humans are always going to be humans. We can maybe adapt, maybe we can use Neuralink as an example and enhance ourselves a little bit. But at the end of the day, our core brain power, if you will, for lack of a better term, is really still wired in the same way. And we're going to find things to do with our time. And we want to be as productive as we can for whatever that definition of success is for ourselves. And so I agree with you in that sense of the answer.
Yeah, and the point I was thinking as you were talking about the business you are creating, Nathan, and it's needed. Things, more systematic approaches are needed. The people who are going to use AI or their technologies or apps to really build those habits. One, you're talking about human mind and brain, and you and I think when we had a discussion, I was talking about fear of rejection and why do we still have fear of rejection, and talking about brain wiring that we had from the ancient years, because if we were rejected back then, we were not part of the society, and then we were alone and we get killed. So fear of rejection is still wired through us from millions of years ago,
Yeah.
and we're still trying to rewire that part of the brain.
Yeah. Yeah. That's a
and
great
and
point.
talking about neuroscience and the things that you are doing and the formulas I'm working on is the same work to help us rewire some of those things so we can live in a flow state.
Yeah. Yeah, well, let's talk about that a little bit more. So with habitual growth, one of the things that we constantly see, I think I shared this with you earlier, but just for the purposes of the audience, oftentimes when we see people come into the app, really the app is designed to do exactly what part of your formula is, right? That desire, that achievement, set your goals, and then what are you doing to work towards those goals on a daily basis? You have your daily actions, which we call essential actions, that are correlated with a goal to ensure that when you are doing something, you're actually helping yourself. You're not just kind of drifting through life, which happens to a lot of people. Happened to me for, quite frankly, many decades, right? And one day I had to wake up and realize, hey, I'm doing all these things, but it's not getting me any closer to this dream that I have for myself. I need to do something different. But we find a lot of times people come in and it's hard work, building these new neural pathways, changing behaviors, changing mental thought processes,
Yeah.
removing that resistance, as you will. And oftentimes people don't follow through. There is this really big gap in accountability and integrity. We make the commitments, we have these dreams, and like you said, but without action, it's just a dream. And so we try to turn dreams into reality through action. So how can people remove that, almost remove some of that resistance in their lives? What are the top maybe two or three things that they can think about and they can actively do on a day-to-day basis to remove that resistance?
So there are several layers. We talk about trifecta, but trifecta is hidden in different places. There's a depending on somebody's belief system. There's a resistance in our body that has come from over childhood, which is Karl Marx. He believes lots of trauma is from childhood. That sits in our body. It's not in our conscious mind. Then there's a also science now believe that we can also be carrying the DNA. Our DNA carries our past lineage, right? Wherever we have come from. So then you might have that trauma in us because talking about generational trauma, 7, 8 years, whether it's through DNA based or just a habitual training based, because one parents didn't learn and they kind of keep passing it on, and it stores in our body, which is body keep the score. There's several books on that. So depending on where the resistance is, we first have to identify. Almost all resistance manifests itself in your body. So let's say you set up a goal and you have daily tasks to do, but as soon as you look at those tasks, I mean, what you have created is what I call the accountability partner. So now your app is an accountability partner. I actually long time ago wrote an article on that, but that's good. That's very very important. We need that. But what happens with it is since it's self learning, we'll hit the resistance, will stop. So at that time, what I tell people, okay, just stop. It's okay. It's okay to stop. Don't push it because if the trauma is in your body is going to start to tighten up. You may feel pain in your neck. Most people feel pain in the back. Some feel pain in their gut. You will feel somewhere in physically form of your resistance is stuck somewhere in your body. When you feel it, just let go and breathe through that. And then try to first solve that resistance before you go and try to do your list. Because what's going to happen is we get the willpower and we push it a little bit. We get the willpower, we push it a little bit. We get the willpower, we push it a little bit. And then the day comes, we just kind of say, "No, I'm tired. I can't. I can't will it." So the whole premises of my book and my work is removing that resistance. So once you are stuck, let's say at a certain point, or it's so difficult to take action, then we gotta go back and resolve the resistance first before we continuously push take the action. Then at that time, identify what that you're feeling it physically. Is it just a procrastination, or you're feeling I'm not good enough? What is it that say, oh, I can't do all of that, or I've been a victim at that time? Oh, do I have to add one more thing? There's some conversation going on in your mind, and figure out where the source of. So that's where the identification process comes in. What is the source of that negative self-belief, negative talk? Don't try to push it. Don't try to fight it. Trust me, I tried all of those things. It doesn't work. You can't fight it. It's Newton's third law. It just will react. You keep fighting it. You keep coming back to the equal opposite force. And I have a strong will, but it's better to just accept it and then work through it.
Yeah.
How did
I
that answer your questions?
It did, yeah, no, absolutely. The only thing I would add to that is I think that's where the beauty of the accountability partner comes in, right? For us, for me, it's the habitual growth app, and it is those days where I just don't have willpower to get everything done. I maybe my one of my core pillars, I didn't sleep that well, so my health isn't at the best that day, or something happened and mentally I'm kind of checked out. But I have built up over time this level of integrity where if I tell you I'm going to do something, I'm going to do it. Right. For whatever reason, I've just built that into an important part of my identity and being. And so for me, if it's on my list, I'm going to get it done. And so it doesn't matter if I'm sick and running 103-degree temperature. It doesn't matter if I ran a marathon the day before or whatever, and I'm super tired. I'm going to still get my list done. If I put it on the list, to me, that is extremely important. So that level of accountability helps, I don't want to say supersede, um, willpower. When they're combined, it's extremely powerful. But if my willpower is down, that accountability partner really helps for me. If I don't have the accountability, my willpower can only get me so far. And so I kind of use a combination of those to just make sure on a daily basis I'm moving forward.
Yeah, you need multiple tools.
Yeah.
And that's what we started talking about earlier on. Any tool, and you just got to figure out how to use it for you, right? If
Yeah.
you're a high integrity person and have already developed lots of discipline in your life, right, it's really easier for you to have another type of discipline.
Yeah. Yeah.
I talk more. I don't want to get into a different topic on inner peace at that point, but then the first thing is to have the discipline. Why don't I have the discipline to begin with, right? So then you kind of go back. So we are complex being, and there are many layers, and depending on where you are in the your life journey, different tools will be needed,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
If you haven't developed the discipline yet, so then the first tool you need to really go and develop the discipline instead of trying to do all these things and doing half,
Hmm.
right?
Hmm.
Because you don't have that level of commitment to finish it. So these are all EQ,
Yep.
right? And the work that you are doing and the formula that I have is all trying to structure it in a way so it's a small bite, and it's a method, it's a framework that they can use over and over again,
Yeah.
instead of reading a book, getting inspired, attending a seminar, getting inspired, and then you're just done after a month. And I'm not against those are also good. You should, if you want to do those, you should do it, but have also some type of framework.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, you allude to the fact that you're writing a book, and I believe you're almost done and it's going to come out soon. I don't want to get into other topics, but I think after the book launches, we should have you back on and talk more because there's obviously a lot of threads we could pull on, whether that's self-awareness, whether that's more on the EQ thread, resourcefulness. It was constantly a word that was going through the back of my mind when it comes to overcoming some of these resistance techniques that you're talking about here. So can you tell us a little bit about the book, when it's expected to come out, and then we'll kind of wind down here with a couple of maybe pieces of advice for the audience.
So book is planning to be out end of this year. I've just applied for the patent for my formula. I think we touched on that,
Yep.
and trademarked it. But so those were some of the steps I was doing as extra work. And the writing, requires a lot of peace and quiet. And the reason it got delayed is because I'm applying the formula on myself.
Mm.
And daily basis, I apply it. I look at it. I all the things I'm talking about, I'm living through it. The health, the finance, the inner peace, the relationships. All those things. I look to harmonize them, right? And then it continues to apply. And as I apply, I learn, and then I write about that instead of just a book on what I think the process should be. So it's a self application that I'm doing as I write the book.
And that's just want to put a really quick statement in here, which is extremely important for anybody listening. I mean, there's too many people out there now, especially with AI, of people just doing things because they're copying it from somebody else and they're getting a couple of likes. Going out and actually building something. I noted earlier before we jumped on the sticky notes behind you, and you said I'm old school, but that's the way people work. You've got a formula that works for you. I love that you're applying it for yourself. You're writing it down. You're teaching other people. You're actually doing the things that you're teaching. Just like I'm over here building habitual growth and using it every single day. I know it works. I can stand behind that work. It's not just something that we're sharing because it sounds really sexy and it's going to get some views. It is because it has an impact on our lives and we want to be able to share that with other people. So I want to note that because I think that's extremely important for listeners to hear.
100%. 100%.
Well, what are a couple of things, I guess maybe tips or tricks or challenges that you would have for the audience before we wind down here? What would be 2 or 3 things that you would say, to either give them an exercise regarding the success formula and kind of what you're about to share in the book, or even how to reduce resistance in their own lives?
I think right now the what's coming to my mind, I'll say it. I mean, there's so many things we can talk on that. Is the language. So the NLP, neuro linguistic programming, has been talked about a lot for many years, but it's the words we choose and the words we choose and how we communicate with ourselves. For example, I was listening to somebody about submission, right? How you should submits to God's will, submission is good. And I always had a problem with submission. And so I had to, because to me, submission means through force. I get submiss, and that's the language I. Not everybody might have the same, but a lot of people might be thinking submission is from force. You forcefully submit, right? And that didn't jive well with me, so I had to create a distinct differentiation between submission and surrender. So surrendering to me is not from is from your love and from your will, where submission comes from that. So the how we use different words, different things that are good for us is very, very important. So it's we gotta pay attention to the self-talk. I mean, lots of people talk about it, but yes, we need to, but differentiate in distinct different things. Don't generalize it. Okay, I must submit, I must submit because I'm not good. You can use the word surrender if submit is not working. And do surrender out of love. And don't get attached to that one thing, right? Same thing with anger is talks about a lot, right? Oh, anger is bad, you shouldn't be angry, blah blah blah. If you're angry, you're a bad person. Well, anger is an emotion that is given to us. Why would we are given anger as an emotion if if not to be used? So then I wrote a blog the other day on power-based anger versus fear-based anger. So fear-based anger is not good, which is we throw a tantrum. Why do you do that, right? For no reason, or get mad at somebody who said something. Where the power-based anger is where I can use to get up, to go to the gym, to use the app that you have to do the task. That's the power based anger. It's the same emotion. So differentiating those, yes, pay attention to your self talk, but listen to the words and how they connect with you and change the words. That
That's
would
really
be
good.
one of the things I would say.
Yeah, no, that's really good. And I haven't ever thought about it like that, but as soon as you said it, it made perfect sense. So no, I think it's great. And
So
you've
that's
actually
most of
given
my
me,
work too, Nathan, is like creating these small micro level differences. Bigger levels been talked about forever. Self-limiting beliefs, triggers, emotions.
yeah,
100 years at least since the 70s or 60s or 50s, you start talking about, you have lots of people that have been talking about it in the EQ sense.
yeah,
But I wanted to go to a micro level. I think that's where, as we get more and more intelligent and more aware, awareness, I should say, intelligence, maybe not the right word, but aware. We have a lot more awareness that we used to have 10 years ago because all the technology, AI, I can quickly ask and understand the question. I don't have to remember all these chapters of books. I can reference it quickly. These the small distinctions in our mind is what is going to accelerate the growth.
yep, yeah. And the more we talk, the more you make me smile, just because I think I think we're onto something. I mean, we both have kind of come together, not knowing each other, but really pursuing a very similar, I think, value set for people. Because I have a tagline that I don't often share publicly about habitual growth, but it is, all about the micro habits and the micro changes, and that's actually what we do within the app itself. And so those, even
100%.
though the smaller details seem minuscule, they have a significant ripple effect and impact when you compound them over time. And that's the power of it, because people get overwhelmed. It's a big thing to say, go chase this goal that you have, 5 years out and people look at you and they're like, well, how do I even start? Well, what do I do
That's
that? It's like, go, you're talking about health, go to the gym and squat 315 pounds. And it's like, well, I can barely pick up the bar, but you have to start with the bar, right? You have to start where you're at. And that's where that seasonality and the change really comes in, because as you start to pursue, as you just take action and start going, you'll realize, hey, I can do a little bit better over here, or now my attention needs to flow over here. And it's those pillars that you talk about, and they all need to work harmoniously together. So I'm really excited for your book to come out. I'm definitely going to pick up a copy and read it all the way through. And I want to have you back on when we can actually talk about it. And I've actually gone through and read everything that you've said. But for now, how can people find you? How do people find you on social media? How can they contact you?
I'm on LinkedIn. I'm on all the different. I'm not on Twitter, but I'm YouTube. Also on most of the stuff I right now I'm posting is on Instagram. It's Raz Bajwa, my first name and my last name. You can just search for me and you'll find me on Instagram, and we continuously develop more and more content. It takes time because, as you know, I'm running a tech company. At the same time, writing a book. At the same time, going and educating students at the different universities. So it's just and writing a book. So many jobs.
You're an incredible talent, and I'm greatly appreciative of your time today. It's been a pleasure as always, and I look forward to connecting again and continuing to build this out. And again, to everyone out there, make sure you look for the book coming out at the end of this year. Find Roz wherever he is at on the socials, and we'll definitely talk again soon. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Nathan, for having me. It's lovely talking to you. Enjoy
Uh,
your day. We'll talk
you
soon.
see ya. Thank you.